This is the Sunday stream opening song because the other song is copyrighted. La 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 la. Oh look, here comes Dog Cat Fox.
Hi, Sky.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sunday stream. The stream I do on Sundays because Sunday is the day to stream on Sundays. Hope you're all doing well on this beautiful Sunday morning. It's actually kind of nice and cool out for once. It's been quite the heat wave recently, but nice temperate morning. It won't last, but it's nice for now. Hope it is at least somewhat comfortable where you are. Hope everyone's doing well. Yes, this is my first Sunday back after my vacation last week when I was out of town. And boy, oh boy, a lot's happened in the meantime, hasn't it? I guess I did do a technical Sunday stream last Sunday, but it wasn't like the Sunday stream. There's a difference there. Like I didn't use the logo or anything. So yeah, how's everybody doing today? And who's joining me on this beautiful Sunday morning? Noah Asensio, good morning. Mike R, good morning. Josh Hammond, good morning. Old Guy Gamer, good morning. Went to bed at 1:08 a.m., got up at 4:38 a.m., 3 hours and 43 minutes. Let's do this. I'm tired. Take a nap. You're old. You deserve it, at least according to your name. Keeverdam, good morning, and thank you, Keeverdam, as always, for providing the links to the GoFundMes and fundraisers for our friends Roan Harushan, Moonshock, Natalie, Angela Ariaga, and Ashley. If you guys can take a look at those and donate if you are able. If you're not, that's fine, but if you can, share those out on social media. That would be very much appreciated. So thank you, Keeverdam. And thank you for everybody considering donating. Mike Savage, Blarg, Advocatus Diaboli, good morning. Who else is here? Shady Grin, good morning. Derek LaRue, good morning to you. And thank you, Derek, as always, for your continued support and generosity. Very much appreciated. Hope you're having a good morning and hope you enjoy the show. Kiro Soldier, good morning. JB, good morning. Samnamnyon Nation, good morning. The best Remy, good morning. Tall Person, good morning to you. Corey Suzuki, good morning to you. Holy cats, Skeeverdam, what is going on? A samurai Dogcat Fox Sparkler, you're amazing. Well, holy cats, it's Dogcat Fox. Oh, Dogcat Fox.
Wowie, wow, wow.
Oh, there's a Keeverdam Dogcat Fox. Wow, Keeverdam, thank you so very much. That's ridiculously generous of you. Appreciate it. Hope you're having a good day. Hope you enjoy the show. And as I said with the Living on Borrowed Crime stream the other night with everyone's amazing generosity recently, as soon as my paycheck hits for the month, I'll be making a donation and paying it forward. So thank you so much, Keeverdam. Appreciate it. Simon Willikins, good morning. Michael Sander, good morning to you. Shadowclaw, oh, and who else is here? Anybody else? Oh, Tier Alexander, good morning to you. And to anybody that I missed, anybody lurking, anybody in the future, or Captain Frost, good morning to you. Hope you're all doing well on this Sunday. Okay, so something's been happening over the last week or so, which I found mightily interesting and entertaining. And that is the accusation that Kamala Harris was a DEI selection. It's really amazing to me. Sort of like Joe Biden's declining cognition. It seems like everybody's suddenly realizing things or having things come up and having revelations that have been obvious and made plain to everyone and their brother since the beginning of this entire endeavor. But now it's like a big surprise. Like, what do you mean? What DEI? What is this DEI? How dare you accuse Joe Biden and or Kamala Harris of either employing or being the recipient of such that's racist and sexist. So I thought we'd go over a couple of things regarding this just for, I don't know, entertainment purposes or edification purposes for those of you that may not know. Although, and I can't claim to be an expert. I'm not an academic on the subject. Can't claim that. But I have been looking into DEI stuff for nigh on 8 years now. So is it true? Is it all just some kind of like cobbled together slur? Or is there something that grounds it? Well, let's take a look at what the media has to say. And interspersed, we'll take a look at what some of the official verbiage is. So first, we have a video from Forbes. I like going to Forbes for some reason. They're very like clearinghouse of stuff. Not only do they deal with financial things, but apparently they also like talking politics. I didn't know this. I don't read Forbes. I don't really pay attention to Forbes except when they put out videos that are relevant to my interests. So let's take a look at a brief video from Forbes. We'll have an article from CNN. We'll have some official statements and other articles to look at, and we'll try to understand exactly what's happening and why. Well, why is kind of obvious. What's happening, I'm still not quite sure I understand it. So let's start off with this video. This video clocks in at just over 6 minutes. Let's find out what Forbes has to say about the accusation that Kamala Harris is where she is because of DEI. This starts very suddenly. There's no pause ahead of time. So as soon as I hit play, our lady's going to start talking.
You might have heard the phrase DEI recently.
Recently? Well, I mean, if the better part of a decade is recently, then sure.
It's the right's new descriptor for Kamala Harris.
Oh, it's the right's new descriptor. It wasn't something that most of us had been saying since the get-go for reasons I will get to shortly. Oh my God, the rights. Okay,
DEI got us Kamala Harris as a vice president.
When was that said? Well, that was just said. Oh, that was just said recently on Fox News. Right. It had never been said before, just so you know.
She is a DEI candidate.
She has proven to America why DEI doesn't work.
Okay, now just as a note, and I'm not giving all credit over to one side or the other here. Calling her a DEI candidate now as a recursive talking point is something new-ish. As far as like all the major networks. But then she is at the forefront of the campaign now, not Biden. So it's kind of a give and take situation. The Democrats have abandoned Biden, which they should have done, and he should have done like at the end, as soon as he took his first term, he should have said, I'm not going to run for a second term. And Kamala could have been up this entire time, could have gotten past all of this. But now that Kamala is all of a sudden in the middle of the presidential campaign, the anointed nominee, all of this stuff comes barreling in. And all of these things are criticisms that have existed for years. But now, of course, they have to be focused because there's not a lot of time left before the election. So, again, this is a common and probably advised talking point, but there are reasons for that.
Now, this kind of talk is nothing new for the vice president.
Oh, okay, then why did you say it was the recent descriptor from the right? Or the newest descriptor from the right? Okay.
Throughout Harris's career, she's been accused of sleeping her way to the top.
She has been, yes.
Playing the race card.
She has, yes.
And lacking qualifications because of her race and gender.
No, hold on. She doesn't lack qualifications because of her race and gender. Her race and gender are her qualifications. No. See, this is the thing that you're twisting around with DEI. DEI assumes that something about your aesthetics marks you as a qualified candidate. Okay, in the absence of a consideration of merit. This is an important distinction. Her race and gender do not preclude her from a job. Her race and gender confirm her as being qualified for the job. Okay, you've got it backwards. You're already twisting it around. So at the forefront, you are mischaracterizing how DEI works to make criticism of it seem bad, even though anyway. Do you see how confusing this is? It's the Ouroboros. It's the snake eating its tail. They've spent the last decade pumping up DEI as a good thing, except when you're the recipient of it, most obviously. Anyway, we'll get into more of that later.
She even has her own birther conspiracy theory.
Okay, that part I don't have any buy-in to at all. That's nonsense. But okay, yes, some things have value and are worth talking about, and some things aren't.
But while those attacks might play well on Fox News or Steven Crowder's show,
She's like a biracial werewolf. Just
okay, you really want to put... I mean, admittedly, I'm not saying Fox News is the top of the pops all the time when it comes to journalism, but Steven Crowder and Fox News on the same level.
I've noticed she started
Hair
wearing.
straightening.
That kind of
Okay, Steven Crowder is a shock jock. Let's be honest here. He's a politically motivated shock jock. That's okay. I mean, if you want to put him up on the same level as an established news network, that's on you for. Or sorry, I said Forbes. This is Mother Jones. Pardon me. Why did I think this was Forbes? I got it into my head this was Forbes. I apologize. This is Mother Jones. I did Even I am confused. I think I saw a Forbes video on this, and I got it in my head that I downloaded the. Anyway, have I woken up today yet? Maybe I'm having a Joe Biden moment. Okay, push the button.
Noticed she started
Hair
wearing.
straightening.
that kind of overt racism is a bit much for a general election.
It's Steven Crowder. And what did Fox News say that was racist? What? Show me.
So instead, right wingers have taken to spamming their new favorite acronym when talking about Harris.
Sorry, whose favorite acronym is it?
People get mad when you say Harris is the hood ornament of DEI.
The only reason Kamala's in the White House is because of the DEI deal Biden cut with Bernie to seal the nomination.
That might be so, but there are other more obvious things that he said in the meantime.
She very well might be the first DEI president.
Now, even with the euphemism, Republicans know this isn't a winning message.
Are you sure? I don't know.
In fact, GOP leadership told lawmakers to stop making race comments about Harris.
DEI isn't a race comment. DEI is a process of selection on the basis of someone's aesthetics first and merit at best secondary or tertiary.
But even if they stopped calling her a DEI vice president today, the
Mhm.
label has stuck in the current lexicon.
Because there is some truth to it, isn't there?
And whether you heard it from Newsmax, Ted Cruz, or your boomer uncle,
Or Joe Biden himself, but we'll get to that.
the implication is the same. DEI is black, or gay, or feminine, or disabled, or poor.
Well, class doesn't usually have anything to do with it. It's mostly focused on gender and race and sometimes, but not as much on orientation. And yes, DEI specifically over and over and over again, as we've seen, has set a standard of straight white male. Those elements or combination thereof are to be avoided as much as possible.
This woman who is literally a DEI hire.
The point is, DEI is the right's latest dog whistle.
Okay, then put the lie to it. What is DEI? How does DEI operate? How was it implemented in the selection of Kamala Harris as vice president or not?
The alphabetical successor to CRT, ESG, and SJW.
Okay, well, SJW, so far as I know, was originally meant to be a criticism, sort of like the Big Bang Theory. But ESG, CRT, all those things were established by the people who promoted them. And they are real things. ESG, ESG is a real thing, right? DEI is a derivative of ESG's intentions. Okay.
When said to the right audience, DEI means replacing white men with black women.
That is, in many cases, quite literally what the intention is. If you've ever listened to the corporate spokespeople and the school administrators and so on, you're not wrong. So they're not wrong.
Hardworking farmers with communist drag queens.
I don't know if you've been paying attention to things recently.
It's probably going to make your kid gay, or at least a Chapel Roan fan.
Okay, I don't know who Chapel Roan is. Okay. Well, okay, I don't want to get a copyright strike for something here. Okay.
DEI is everything your estranged father is terrified of.
You mean like racial and sexual discrimination in the workplace? Yeah, there was a whole movement back in the 60s to try to avoid us ever allowing that to happen again under law. Huh.
but with a corporate sounding label so we can say it in public.
What does that sound like? The witch trials, except they replaced drowning with racial justice. You die by DEI either way.
Earlier this month, I talked about how the right would struggle if Kamala Harris ran for president.
She did run for president, and she failed. Now she's been anointed the nominee without having run previously, at least in this cycle.
So this week for Mother Jones, I'm going to dive into what DEI actually is.
Oh, good! Thank goodness. Okay, well, I mean, you only took 2 minutes of saying that it's completely incorrect to refer to her as having been the recipient of DEI considerations. All right, now you're going to tell us what DEI really is, the real definition. Okay, I can't wait.
Its real definition, what it means to Republicans, and how it's evolved from previous dog whistles.
Well, let's just talk about what it means in general. If it is working as you intend it to, what does it mean? And then what do you think Republicans are saying about it?
In reality, DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Right, and because all those words sound by definition to be good things, then putting them together must be a really good thing. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea.
It often refers to inclusion policies.
It can, but you want to talk about that first letter a little bit?
The ones you'd see at companies or at a school.
Yes, companies and educational institutions. You want to talk about affirmative action?
These can relate to someone's gender,
yeah,
their age,
yeah, not so much,
sexual orientation,
yeah,
and disability status,
and race,
and a ton of other personal identifiers.
Like race,
i.e. diversity.
i.e. race. Okay, it's very convenient for her to leave out the chief element of the diversity filtering system. Isn't that convenient? Oh, no. DEI is such a racial slur, but let me tell you what DEI really is and leave out race. Good gravy. Faustonia, holy cow, thank you so much. Hi, Scribe in chat. Is this lady gaslighting us? I distinctly remember in 2020, Biden saying that his VP pick was going to be a woman of color. Am I misremembering it? Faustonia, you know what? Given what I have planned for later on in the stream, this one is for you. In fact, you are correct, Faustonia. And I will have some quick evidence for that as we proceed. But thank you so very much. And yes, the hypocrisy on display here, both from the Democrats and their surrogates, is quite mind-boggling. But anyway, okay, so talk about diversity, but conveniently leave off race. Okay.
The goal of this idea is to create an equitable playing field by accounting for institutional discrimination and disadvantage to give everyone the same chance at opportunity.
No, you just told us that is a filtering system on the basis of gender and sexual orientation and age. And I think she might have mentioned class in there, but either way, if you are assessing people on non-determinative elements of their character and merit at the forefront, you are not reducing unfair discrimination. You are, in fact, employing unfair discrimination. And consequently, you are restricting opportunities from people because of reasons that have nothing to do with their ability to fulfill the requirements of the position. It is difficult to take this person seriously right now.
Of course, this would include every person.
Every person? Oh, okay. Well, again, I'm jumping ahead, and Faustonia has already said it. How many men were under consideration for vice president under Joe Biden? I mean, he just precluded 50% of the population out of hand without even considering anyone's, merits or character. So does every person have that opportunity based on Joe Biden's filtering system? No, demonstrably not. So what exactly are you saying again?
Affirmative action was one of the first DEI type policies.
Yes, let's talk about affirmative action. What happened with affirmative action? What did affirmative action do, and how did it do it? And how did that square against constitutional law?
Title IX could also fall into this category.
Let's talk about affirmative action. What happened with affirmative action? What did affirmative action do? And how did it square with the 14th Amendment and Title VI specifically? And extended therefrom, how does DEI square with Title VII?
Right. So while the term DEI is more recent, the idea is not.
You're correct. Giving people unfair preferential treatment on the basis of things that have nothing to do with their merit or character is not a new idea. You're right.
Simply put, don't discriminate against someone's race, gender, sexual orientation, or whatever else it would be dickish to hate.
Really? So then why do we need DEI if DEI puts into consideration those very elements of someone outside of their personal merit?
So that's what DEI originally meant.
No, no, you didn't. You didn't give any kind of definition to it. Most cursory explanation, and you didn't explain why. But okay. Now this is your best shot. Go ahead. Sorry.
Or at least what it was supposed to mean.
Right, what it was supposed to mean. Okay, so what does it mean now?
But now it's in the hands of right-wing assholes. So like Pepe the Frog, fedoras, and the OK symbol, these losers have perverted another innocuous thing.
Innocuous. DEI was innocuous? It is innocuous? Really? It's just an ignorable thing. It hasn't been a movement. It hasn't been a cause. It hasn't been put into executive orders or anything. No, it's just innocuous, guys. It's like a bottle cap or some lint in your pocket. Just an innocuous thing, guys. That's all it is. And now Republicans have gotten a hold of my bottle cap and they turned it into an evil sigil. What are you talking about?
Now, to people like Tucker Carlson and Charlie Kirk, here's what DEI means.
Okay, tell me what Tucker Carlson and Charlie Kirk think DEI means.
Woke society has prioritized skin color and sexual orientation over actual skills.
You've got it right. And I don't need to listen to Tucker Carlson or Charlie Kirk to get that. I just have to listen to the corporate DEI executives and consultants and the other officials in academia and otherwise that have said those very things. Their goals are about percentile demographic fit, not about skill, not about merit. Their first look as to what is the racial and or gender makeup of their workforces or their college campuses, and how do we solve for that problem? I have endless examples on my channel of this. I don't need, see, here's the thing. I would be surprised. And if somebody in my audience can say otherwise, please, by all means do so. I would be surprised if I've ever, in any meaningful way, leaned on right-wing pundits for learning about DEI. Okay, I go to the horse's mouth, as it were, because obviously someone can be biased on the obviously opposing side. Now, I listen to the people that promote it passionately. I listen to what they say. I look at the articles and the visuals they put up to demonstrate what they mean to do. I don't need to listen to Tucker Carlson for my definition of DEI. I listen to the DEI practitioners for my definition of DEI. And what you have just described is 100% accurate. And yet you're saying this is some kind of twisted conspiratorial definition from one side of the political aisle? I'm not sure you're paying attention to the right sources for your information. Or if you are, that you're not just sort of like closing your eyes and whistling past the graveyard here.
This means a lot of jobs are being filled by incompetent candidates.
It's not a matter of incompetency. It's a matter that the first consideration is not someone's competence. Is that you're excluding and precluding other people from having the opportunity and not making a fair playing field because you are valuing someone's skin color or gender or orientation primarily before you even look at their qualifications. And consequently, if there are better qualified, more competent people out there that you are ignoring because they don't have the right look, you are, in the aggregate, going to reduce the quality of the output and of your workforce. That's just the cold equations of it.
Who are somehow always prioritized over straight white men. Funny how that works.
Yeah, imagine if you had a process that didn't pay attention to race, gender, or orientation at all. And why did you bring up straight white men? Why do you sound so sarcastic about that? Didn't you say before that this was all about having opportunity for everyone?
Oh, you have a black surgeon? Yeah, you'll probably die on the table.
What? Elon Musk clashes with Don Lemon over DEI lowering medical standards. People will die. Okay. Do you understand the concept of ignoring merit for aesthetic fit, first and foremost? Okay.
A woman is piloting your flight? I mean, I'd be worried. Oh,
Okay, let's go back to the International Air Transport Association and their fast tracking of employees to pilot positions based on their gender, first and foremost. What happens when you try to rush someone through a process in order to fit your aesthetic desires within a time frame? You know, when the imperative isn't safety and quality of service, but that your workforce look a particular way. Do you think there's a possibility that mistakes might be made, that speed might kill? You're increasing the chances of problems if you're not hiring people on the basis of their merit first and foremost. Okay. And it's difficult to measure that, right? It's one of those things where it's like, well, you can say that, and it's probably true, but when it comes down to brass tacks, can you prove it in the end? Can you say, well, oh, if in a different multiverse version of things, if this person had been hired versus that person, then these problems wouldn't have happened? No, it's true. You can't, it's difficult to prove that. But if you think about the mechanisms of your decision-making process, what are you putting up first? Quality or quantity?
and if your law school just fell in the rankings, remember, it's the gays' fault.
Wait, what? Okay, she puts up these headlines for like 2 seconds. Activism over education. Law school embraced drag shows and social justice amid rankings free fall. Well, if I was going to choose a law school to attend or give my money to, would I want to go to a school that focused on the thing that is in its name, or the school that is doing and promoting things that have nothing to do with the profession I'm seeking to become a part of? I mean, if a law school started promoting horticulture as its primary focus, would I attend that law school? I don't know.
His fault. The really convenient part about all of this is you can apply it to anything for any reason without any proof.
Well, the only proof I need is if someone says that they are implementing a DEI process or policy in their organization. That's about it. That's the first red flag. And then specifically see what their mission statement on that basis is. So if they say they're doing DEI, if they say they promote DEI, if they say that DEI is the air that we breathe, and it should be part and parcel with every process within our organization, I take them at their word.
Especially the bad stuff. Let's just say, totally hypothetical.
Oh, I love hypotheticals.
A ship crashed into a bridge in a major American city, tragically killing 6 and destroying a major route for highway and maritime traffic.
Okay, so in that instance, questioning the qualifications and the competence of the people in charge of piloting that ship would be wrong.
Let's just say that happened.
Okay, let's just say that happened.
Sure, maybe it was because there was an electrical problem.
Maybe it was.
With the boat, so it couldn't stop.
Okay. So the competence, and was it incumbent upon the people piloting that ship to know to look for those kind of issues before they set sail? I mean, you know, an electrical problem happening out of the blue without any warning and without any time to account for it. I mean, I could see that happening, sure. But, you know, there were people that were supposed to be maintaining that ship and piloting that ship and seeing to the operations of that ship. So if the ship had electrical issues before the bridge crash, who should have spotted those before they happened?
But what if we just blamed it on DEI instead?
Well, I don't know. Who was in charge of overseeing that part of the ship's operations? What were their qualifications, and or how were they hired?
Wouldn't that be so much easier?
If there is a flaw in vetting people taking care of important operations on a giant ship, and if DEI as a stated element of their hiring process had any part in that, would that be an irrelevant thing to examine?
A train derails. DEI.
Well, I don't know.
Crypto bros crash a bank. DEI. Boeing spends years prioritizing profits over passenger safety. DEI.
Okay, well, here's the thing. Corporate greed and malfeasance is nothing new. It all happened before DEI. So it is impossible and wrong to critique or reassess or examine hiring or promotion practices that may have put someone in a position of importance that they were not qualified to hold. How about you take DEI out of the entire thing for a second? Okay. Is it wrong to go back and reassess who was given the job of seeing to these safety concerns and how did they get there and were they qualified to be there? And if the flavor of the week process by which they reached this position was through a DEI assessment, okay.
But this tactic is nothing new.
What? After a disaster, assessing someone's competence? You're right.
Remember 3 years ago when CRT was all the rage?
Yes, I do. I remember 7 years ago when elements of CRT were all the rage, except nobody was talking about it because it'd be called racist or something.
Or 2 years ago when it was ESG?
ESG is still a thing. And DEI is meant to service ESG's goals. ESG is not some made-up moniker by the right wing. This is something implemented by left-wing corporate ideologues.
And grooming was pretty big last year.
Oh, yeah. What?
All of those words are synonyms for everything the right hates.
So the right hates pedophiles, race-based educational programs, and discrimination in the workplace and in academia? Okay. If you say so.
They're dog whistles, or phrases that mean something different depending on who's listening to them.
Uh-huh. Okay, well, then by comparison, tell me what the left wing's dog whistles are.
You hear DEI and you probably think of your job's HR department.
No, but then I'm within a much more informed bubble about DEI than most people, I suppose. Not to sound snobby, but that's just, you know, when you spend 8 years immersing yourself in this stuff, I don't just think of the HR department anymore, no.
But for your QAnon uncle, DEI is an activation phrase to send the most unhinged memes in the family group chat.
Okay, do you have something specific you'd like to bring up, or just constant demeaning hypothetical people that you obviously hate for what they think? You know, there's a definition to the word bigotry. You might want to look it up.
You die by DEI either way.
The right loves to use dog whistles.
Sure. The left has no dog whistles.
Especially as society advances and becomes more inclusive and less welcoming to bigotry.
What was that again? Sorry, what was that again? You know, it seems to me. Nah, you know what? Do I need to say it? I don't need to say it, do I? Yeah. All the same, I might take a very small victory. Ay, caramba. Okay, we're almost done with this. Well, relatively. We've got another minute.
A really good example of this is Richard
Oh.
Nixon's Southern strategy.
Oh, really? Okay, I understand that Richard Nixon is not nearly as ancient history as the Alien and Sedition Act of 1872, or whatever the heck it was. But come on, really? You're going to go all the way back to Richard Nixon now?
Republican strategist Lee Atwater once explained that by 1968, using the N-word on the campaign trail would actually hurt you for the first time in, the history of the country.
Uh-huh. Yes, Lee Atwater was a no holds barred, take no prisoners political animal. He was. He was basically Karl Rove's mentor in all ways, shapes, and forms. But do you have anything you'd like to bring up of more, recent times? Any dog whistles from the left? Right? Aside from your own sort of like your QAnon uncle. How about QAnon? Is that a dog whistle by any chance? Or conspiracy theorist, right? Or anti-vaxxer. You got any others you'd like to bring up from the other side of the aisle over the last couple of years?
So instead of having a less racist agenda, Republicans just had to use more abstract terms like states' rights and forced busing.
Forced busing? Huh. Wasn't there back in, what was it, 2020, 2019? I forget now. I guess it was 2019. Wasn't there somebody who was talking about busing on the campaign trail? God, who was that? Who was talking about busing on the Democratic campaign trail? It's difficult to remember now.
They weren't saying the slur, but they still got the message across to their supporters.
Right. Okay.
These phrases have evolved over time. Welfare queens, globalist elite.
Welfare queen was something used to describe an individual. Right? It became synonymous with a type of behavior, but it's sort of like calling Al Capone Scarface or something, right? Or what am I thinking of? I'm thinking of something else. I suddenly forget. Anyway, welfare queen was one of those like headline type titles given to like it's almost like another kind of criminal, like the Boston Strangler or something. Right, you give somebody a big like supervillain title. Welfare queen was describing an individual person, a lady who had built the government out of, hundreds of thousands of dollars on the basis that she was poor or needed social services and such, and she was just cheating the government out of money. Yeah. Well, anyway, we don't want to talk about that. It was an actual individual that was the title was given to originally, and then became a synonymous with someone who cheats the government. But anyway,
welfare queens, globalist elites, Barack Hussein Obama.
That's his name. If people want to give some kind of conspiratorial context to his middle name, that's their problem. But it's his name. I don't know.
But they all evoke the same feeling, a hostility towards an other.
And you are doing so much better in that regard here than anyone else when you're talking about people's QAnon uncles and your dad's this, that, or the other, and your family dinners or whatever. Really?
And DEI is just the latest addition to this long, shitty trend.
I'll give you that. It is a recent addition, relatively recent addition to a long, shitty trend of moralized evil doing. I will give you that. It's taking the worst ideas from the dustbin of history, brushing them off, repackaging them as something valuable and virtuous, and then trying to pretend like you're not just contributing to the terrible past that we were trying to get past. Terrible past. Past versus past. P-A-S-T, P-A-S-S-E-D. Past. It's sort of like, what's another good word? Let's say, what the homonyms? I think that's it. Yeah. Anyway.
Because sure, you can hold 6 elected offices.
Yes, you can.
You can have an entire law career before that.
Yeah, you can. It's true.
You can even be the vice president of the United States.
And how did she get that job?
But if you just add those 3 little letters, DEI, it is instantly invalidated by the assertion that every single one of your accomplishments is because of how society treats your race and gender.
Let's talk about how society treats race and gender in a moment, shall we?
Rather than despite it. I'm working with Mother Jones this election, creating weekly video content explaining the weird intersection between media and politics.
Oh, thank goodness. Well, you know, if you do another video on something relevant to my interests, maybe I'll take a look at it. Anyway, let's take a look. Let's take a look at a couple of things. You know, just for everyone's information. Let's see here. What shall I do? How shall I do this? How would I do? Sorry guys, it's all live TV. Let's get that there. Let's turn that off, and let's turn this off. Okay. Before I get to that, pardon me. Let's get to, come on, StreamYard, you can do it. You can do it. Turn that gear. Thank you, Johnny Hellcat. I didn't know DEI meant how well you treat that D. I know, it's all about the D. Everything stems from the D. Let's have a little history lesson, shall we, for a moment? Let's go back to the heady days of 2019. Biden says he would prefer a person of color or a woman as his vice president. Friday, August 30th, 2019, CNN. Oh, all right, so he's already setting up the stage that anyone who is white and or anyone who is a man is already being filtered out from consideration. No, but before he's even assessed someone's merit, politically, socially, whatever. Okay, all right. But he would prefer it. That's a preference, not necessarily a hard and fast rule, right? Okay. At least not until 2020. March 15th, 2020 from CNN. Biden says he will pick woman to be his vice president. All right, so 50% of the population, in relative terms, now has no opportunity to become vice president under Biden. Okay, and again, no consideration of merit, no consideration of political career, popularity, electability, nothing. Just first and foremost, men, you're out of luck. You're out of luck. And then to reaffirm that, this one comes from Time Magazine. Joe Biden definitively vows to pick a woman vice president. Same day, this is from Time Magazine. I didn't get the Time Magazine in there. So, at the very least, Joe Biden decided at the forefront, before anything else happened, that his vice president would be, at the very least, a woman, and previously stated a preference of a person of color. So no white people need apply. All right. And then let's see what happened. Very quickly into his presidency. Was there something that he kind of published like immediately upon becoming president? Yeah, pretty quickly therein, let's say. June 25th, 2021. So just a few months after his inauguration. Executive order on diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in the federal workforce. So not only did he employ DEI type practices in selecting his vice president, by at the forefront putting a racial and or gender filter on who he would select, excluding entire swaths of the population in the process that might have been as or more qualified. But then 6 months into his presidency, we have an executive order specifically on diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in the federal workforce. Now, I can't, and make this stream not 7 hours long, read this entire deal. I'll link to it. I think I put it in the description. If I didn't, I will give it to you in the chat now if you'd like to take a look at yourself. But there's a couple things I wanted to at least highlight. As the nation's largest employer, the federal government must be a model for diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility where all employees are treated with dignity and respect. Accordingly, the federal government must strengthen its ability to recruit, hire, develop, promote, and retain our nation's talent and remove barriers to equal opportunity. Equal opportunity. It must also provide resources and opportunities to strengthen and advance diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility across the federal government. The federal government should have a workforce that reflects the diversity of the American people. A growing body of evidence demonstrates that diverse, equitable, inclusive, and accessible workplaces yield higher performing organizations. What you want to bet that comes from that 2015 McKinsey study that everybody and their brother uses as their Bible on this. Federal merit system principles include that the federal government's recruitment policy should, quote, endeavor to achieve a workforce from all segments of society, and that, quote, all employees and applicants for employment should receive fair and equitable treatment in all aspects of personnel management, unquote. Let's see, let's scroll down a little bit here. Definitions. This is the important bit. For purposes of this order, in the context of the federal workforce, the term, quote, underserved communities, unquote, refers to populations sharing a particular characteristic, as well as geographic communities who have been systematically denied a full opportunity to participate in aspects of economic, social, and civic life. In the context of the federal workforce, this term includes individuals who belong to communities of color, such as Black and African American, Hispanic and Latino, Native American, Alaska Native and Indigenous, Asian American, Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander, Middle Eastern, and North African persons. So underserved communities means anyone but white people. Okay? It also includes individuals who belong to communities that face discrimination based on sex, sexual orientation, and gender identity, including lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, gender nonconforming, and non-binary LGBTQ plus persons. So, underserved communities means non-white and, generally speaking, not straight, even though transgender does not denote someone's sexual orientation. It is still included, but in general terms. Persons who face discrimination based on pregnancy or pregnancy-related conditions, parents and caregivers. Okay. I don't usually hear about pregnancy and caregivers, but okay. It also includes individuals who belong to communities that face discrimination based on their religion or disability, first-generation professionals or first-generation college students. Okay. Maybe I'm just completely losing it here. I'm still never quite sure how being a first generation whatever is something that someone would discriminate against you for, unless you're at like some kind of legacy Harvard Ivy League thing and someone says, oh, your family doesn't have any roots here, something like that, some snobbish thing. I mean, so I guess it does possibly exist, but it's not something I ever really hear about. I guess I need a more active example. I'm always looking for active examples. Individuals with limited English proficiency, immigrants, well, are they here legally? Individuals who belong to communities that may face employment barriers based on older age or former incarceration, persons who live in rural areas, veterans and military spouses, always got to bring up veterans, and persons otherwise adversely affected by persistent poverty, discrimination, or inequality. Right. Okay. But you front loaded this entire thing with race and orientation. So if any of the people that fall within these other categories happen to be white and straight, they are less vital to this process than someone who isn't, right? B, the term diversity means the practice of including the many communities, identities, races, ethnicities, backgrounds, abilities, cultures, and beliefs of the American people, including underserved communities. Well, underserved communities already includes all these things that you just put up on the top there. So underserved communities is diversity, right? The term equity means the consistent and systemic, fair, just, and impartial treatment of all individuals, including individuals who belong to underserved communities that have been denied such treatment. Well, how do you know they've been denied such treatment? Based on their race? You can look at somebody and based on their race, you know that they are effectively impaired socially. Do we see the cracks beginning to form in this way of thinking about people? And also, equity does not mean this. Equity means equality of outcome. That means you are gaming the system to make sure that it looks like everybody's being successful. To backwards justify the fact that you just discriminated against a bunch of people in the first place to reach this population in your workforce. And the term inclusion means the recognition, appreciation, and use of the talents and skills of employees of all backgrounds. Well, I think that is more incumbent upon the employee because they're doing their job. It shouldn't be a special thing. It should be part and parcel with having a job. And then they add accessibility, which is something that, depending on how you employ it, no pun intended, may be okay. The term accessibility means the design, construction, development, and maintenance of facilities, information and communication technology, programs, and services so that all people, including people with disabilities, can fully and independently use them. I think some of this has already been covered in the Americans with Disabilities Act, either directly or by implication. So this all seems a little bit redundant to me, but then a lot of this seems ridiculous. But anyway, let's look at some instances where underserved communities, defined primarily by race and orientation here, shows up in this executive order. If I can spell today, or type, I should say. Okay, underserved communities. So we got the definition. Individuals may belong to more than one underserved community and face intersecting barriers. Intersectionality, yes. Let's see, the term diversity, yes. The term equity, yes. Okay, let's see here. The director of OPM, the chair of the EEOC, and the deputy director for management of OMB shall review existing guidance, regulations, policies, and practices for purpose of this section, guidance, that govern agency collection of demographic data about federal employees, and consider issuing, modifying, or revoking such guidance in order to expand the collection of such voluntary self-reported data and more effectively measure the representation of underserved communities in the federal workforce. So basically, find out what all of your people look like and then make some decisions to make the workforce look more better-ish on the basis of demographic fit. It's a lot of legalese, but I can read between the lines a little bit, so I'm happy to be corrected. Next, improve outreach to and recruitment of individuals from underserved communities for internship, fellowship, and apprenticeship programs. All right, so setting people up for opportunities based in whole or in part on their race and or orientation or their gender. What else do we have? The director of the Office of Science and Technology Policy and director of OPM and the deputy director for management of OMB, in consultation with the chair of the EEOC, shall coordinate a government-wide initiative to strengthen partnerships initiative to facilitate recruitment for federal employment opportunities of individuals who are members of underserved communities. So, again, racial, orientation, gender discrimination has to be assumed to be part of this. Here's the thing. Even though they overloaded the term underserved communities with race and orientation and gender and age and class and veterans and so on, okay, the fact that race and orientation are even in there already poisoned the pot. You have to assume then that any decision made under this executive order to put somebody into a position of federal employment is there primarily because they fall within a demographic that is desirable. And that demographic may indeed and explicitly include their race, their gender, their orientation. You see, this is the problem with affirmative action. This is the problem with DEI. You put a question mark over the head of anyone that could be even suspected of having benefited from the process of whether or not they're there legitimately on the basis of their merit and character. They never seem to learn that lesson. You need to remove these suspicions by removing the blatant discrimination. Let's see. The head of each agency shall also address any barriers to access or to participation in such programs faced by members of underserved communities. Well, apparently simply being part of an underserved community is a barrier in and of itself, right? The head of each agency shall take steps to implement or increase the availability and use of diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility training programs for employees, managers, and leadership. Such training programs should enable federal employees, managers, and leaders to have knowledge of systemic and institutional racism and bias against underserved communities, be supported in building skill sets to promote respectful and inclusive workplaces, and eliminate workplace harassment, have knowledge of agency accessibility practices, and have increased understanding of implicit and unconscious bias. Implicit bias, such as, are you the correct race, gender, orientation for this job that I have to put in consideration first before anything having to do with your education, skill set, or character? Right. Okay. So this came directly from the White House. This was the philosophy employed not only by the federal government after Joe Biden took over, but certainly can be reasonably assumed based on his statements prior to becoming president, that these were the thoughts he was putting into practice when choosing a vice president. So, is Kamala Harris a DEI selection for vice president? Yes. Is she where she is on the basis of her gender primarily and her race certainly secondarily? Yes. Is it on the basis of her political acumen and success? Well, let's think about that for a second. She ran for president, and what did she do? She lost. She lost in probably the most embarrassing way ever. She lost her own state. Her own state did not support her in the primaries. She blew a $40 million war chest on a failed presidential campaign. By the time the primaries actually happened, you know, the real primaries where you had everything happen over the first primary started taking place, she was an afterthought. People weren't even thinking about her anymore until it came time for Biden to start picking VPs, and he started saying, oh, women. She wasn't chosen because she's some kind of pro, and certainly her performance as vice president, especially in the early days when she was given a, more room to maneuver, didn't prove that she was ready for prime time. And I've talked about, there's a particular article I'll bring up again near the end here, in case anybody hasn't read it, that you really should read. Whether you're on the fence about voting for Kamala Harris or not, you really should read the article about her running her VP office. But let's see what CNN has to say, doing their own Mother Jones here. What is DEI? Republicans are using the term to attack Kamala Harris, but experts say it's widely misunderstood. Oh, okay. Well, let's all be corrected again, shall we? One more time. The ongoing controversy surrounding diversity, equity, and inclusion has spilled over into the 2024 presidential race, with Vice President Kamala Harris on the path to becoming the Democratic nominee. Earlier this week, Tennessee Republican Representative Tim Burchett suggested in an interview with CNN's Manu Raju that President Joe Biden chose Harris as a running mate because she was a black woman. 100% she is a DEI hire, Burchett said. Let's think about that again for a second. Just for a second. Biden says he would prefer a person of color, a woman as vice president. Biden says he will pick a woman to be his vice president. Joe Biden definitively vows to pick a woman vice president. So, okay, Tim Burchett has suggested that she was chosen because she's a black woman. CNN, your rejoinder? Supporters have defended Harris, who, if elected, would become the nation's first female president. Okay, so you're going to bring up that Tim Burchett says this, suggested this, but you're not going to offer any counterclaim? Because I seem to recall the news outlet that I remember telling me about this first was, CNN, quite proudly in big, bold letters. But okay, CNN, you don't want to come back with something? Okay. In an interview with CNN's Wolf Blitzer, UN Ambassador Susan Rice called the attacks from Republicans, quote, extremely offensive and dehumanizing. Yes, it's extremely offensive and dehumanizing to value someone on the basis of their skin color and gender primarily, isn't it? It kind of ignores their personal identity and agency, doesn't it, CNN? Rice said the attacks insinuate that people from marginalized groups who achieve success or rise to leadership roles didn't earn it. That is incredibly insulting, Rice said. Yes, it would be insulting if you had any reason to believe you got into a position of authority not on the basis of your merit, but because you fit someone's aesthetic preferences. That would be insulting, would it not, CNN? But Harris isn't the first target in Republicans' efforts to discredit people of color and the programs that help promote diversity. Since 2023, 85 anti-DEI bills that target programs at colleges have been introduced in 28 states and in Congress, according to a tally by the Chronicle of Higher Education. 14 have been signed into law in states like Texas and Florida. Well, yeah, what did the Supreme Court have to say about affirmative action? Would you cite for us the long pre-established constitutional amendments or federal laws that the Supreme Court cited when it came to affirmative action, which is effectively what DEI is in corporate speak? Would you like to talk about that? A 2023 survey by the Pew Research Center found that 52% of employed U.S. adults said they have DEI trainings or meetings at work, and 33% they have a designated staff member who promotes DEI. Well, gosh, I guess if a lot of places have DEI as part of their makeup, that must make it valid? But recently, some companies, you want to name some, have slashed teams dedicated to DEI. Why is that? And wealthy corporate leaders such as Bill Ackman and Elon Musk have made posts on social media that decry diversity programs. Why? Why did they slash the budgets? Why? Critics say, no, don't talk about critics. Talk about the companies that slashed the budgets and teams of their DEI programs. Don't talk about critics. Talk about the people who actually used those programs and then changed their minds. Why? Why did they do that? Critics say DEI programs are discriminatory. They are, and attempt to solve racial discrimination by disadvantaging other groups, particularly white Americans. They do. But supporters and industry experts insist the decades-old practice has been politicized and is widely misunderstood. Then why have some companies that obviously had DEI programs slashed their budgets or gotten rid of them, CNN? You don't need to go about the critics saying they're bad. I want to know about the people who promoted and advocated for these things and why they changed their minds. But okay. What is DEI? CNN interviewed 7 DEI experts and industry leaders and asked each to define diversity, equity, and inclusion. Oh boy, this ought to be good. Although their responses varied slightly. Okay, slightly. Like what's slightly? You know, like missing landing on the moon. Slightly could be a mile or 1,000 miles. What does slightly mean, CNN? Most had a shared vision for what constitutes DEI. So you're not going to give us their individual responses. You're just going to amalgamate them together, and we just have to take it on faith that this... Oh, okay. All right, CNN. Diversity is embracing the differences everyone brings to the table, whether it's someone's race, age, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation, physical ability, or other aspects of social identity. None of those things say anything about who you are. And in fact, all of those elements, I think to a 1, are things you are not allowed to assess under Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And likewise, you are not allowed to assess in opportunities under Title VI in both educational institutions and or any organization that accepts federal funding. So, everything under this definition, under CNN's most massaged and amalgamated definition, include elements that should be excluded from consideration under federal law. Let's just keep that in mind. Equity is treating everyone fairly and providing equal opportunities. Then why isn't it called diversity, equality, and inclusion? There's a reason why it's not called diversity, equality, and inclusion. It's called equity because equity means equality of outcome, not equality of opportunity. You got it wrong. Inclusion is respecting everyone's voice and creating a culture where people from all backgrounds feel encouraged to express their ideas and perspectives. Are you sure about that? Really? Well, let's talk about that first level of decision making. No? Okay. Daniel Apong, founder of the Courage Collective, a consultancy that advises companies on DEI. Man, I'm going to have to look up and see if Daniel has a, I'll have to keep that name in mind. I'll have to see if I can find a talk of his or something on TEDx or some kind of corporate promotional thing. I think I've heard of the Courage Collective before, but I don't know if they've ever done a video on it. Founder of the Courage Collective, a consultancy that advises companies on DEI, said DEI was created because marginalized communities have not always had equal opportunities for jobs or felt a sense of belonging in majority white corporate settings. Okay, so we already have our rules of the road here. Quote, that is the genesis of why some of these programs exist, he said. It was an attempt to try to create workplaces where more or all people can thrive, unquote, unless they were white, right? Because if you have a corporate setting that has white people in it, that has to be done away with. President Lyndon Baines Johnson signs the Civil Rights Act on what? Signs? You mean signed? CNN? You're talking past tense, right? This isn't the subheading to a photograph or something. Okay, President Lyndon Baines Johnson signs the Civil Rights Act on July 2nd, 1964. The law made it illegal to discriminate on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, or national origin, and barred unequal application of voter registration requirements. It also banned segregation in public places like public schools and libraries. You're right. That did happen. So why is DEI necessary? And if you have proof that any of these things are happening elsewise, it's illegal to do so, right? That is such a bizarre thing to add at the end of this section. When did workplaces start embracing DEI? Well, as of, at least in my world, 2015, 2016. The backlash against DEI may feel like a pendulum swing from 2020 when the nation faced a racial reckoning following George Floyd's death. But the DEI practice has been around for decades. Well, again, I've only been paying attention to it since the middle of the not the middle of the aughts, the middle of the tens. Dominique Hollins, founder of the DEI consulting firm We360. Okay, I'm gonna have to look this one. Man, you know, there's so many DEI consulting firms and advocates out there. They're all over the place, and there's not much of a barrier for entry. And so I got to look these up. From firm We360 said the origins of DEI programs date back to the civil rights movement, which played a pivotal role in accelerating efforts to create more diverse and inclusive workplaces. How does that square with Title VII today? How does that square with the Supreme Court's decision on affirmative action last year? Title VII, of the Civil Rights Act established the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, which works to eliminate employment discrimination. Not very well these days, because they've given a free pass to DEI again and again and again, despite endless numbers of public statements saying that companies are using quota systems on the basis of race or gender orientation. What's the EEOC doing? In the 1960s and 70s, employees began filing discrimination lawsuits with the EEOC, and many companies began incorporating diversity into their business strategies by providing diversity training, according to a 2008 report published in the Academy of Management, Learning, and Education. Oh, so businesses had institutionalized discriminatory practices, and when the EEOC was created, when people finally had an opportunity to fight back against these things, they had to, take away the barriers that discriminated on the basis of race and gender, huh? Okay. These diversity training efforts emerged around the time that affirmative action began by executive order by President John F. Kennedy. And what's affirmative action like today? All of the two concepts may seem similar. Affirmative action is different from DEI because it required federal contractors to treat all applicants and employees equally, regardless of race, color, religion, and sex. Well, I will give you that in spirit, it's different than DEI because DEI requires you to treat people differently on the basis of race and color and sex, not so much religion and not orientation. Colleges and universities also used affirmative action to boost enrollment of students of color at majority white schools. But last year, the Supreme Court gutted affirmative action, ruling that race-conscious college admissions were unconstitutional. You mean racially discriminatory college admissions. Let's call it what it is. Race conscious, racially discriminatory college admissions. I like how they retreat to this clever wordplay to change what it is into something that it isn't while it still remains exactly what it is. After President Ronald Reagan backed corporate deregulation policies that said companies should be addressing discrimination internally in the 1980s, Hollins said some of the diversity efforts lost momentum. I think you need to have government oversight over these things. I think you need to have a watchdog that goes beyond corporate America. Unfortunately, the EEOC has been effectively shepherding DEI programs by not reacting to their obvious law-breaking policies. You need to have a federal enforcement that actually enforces federal law and doesn't just sit back rather than risk being called racist or something. Which is exactly what we're seeing here. Right? The sky, saying the sky is blue is now racist. Right? DEI puts someone's appearance over their skill set is now a racist statement. In the decades that followed, Hollins said, many companies kept pushing for DEI-focused jobs and training in a piecemeal fashion instead of creating ongoing programs and dedicated teams. Why? Hollins said many companies didn't have the staffing or resources to sustain DEI efforts. Okay, well, let's just talk for a second about the idea of DEI. DEI as a phrase, as a moniker, is only relatively recently created. Okay, it was D and I, D ampersand I, diversity and inclusion. DEI didn't come about until roundabouts the time I started doing my channel. That was not the popular phrase. So even the history of the terms, they're not giving us an honest accounting for here. But Floyd's murder by Minneapolis police in May 2020, sure it was, sparked a racial reckoning and a renewed push for creating DEI leadership roles and initiatives at major corporations. How do these two things connect? How does a guy dying in police custody, however you might want to categorize it, have to do with DEI roles in corporations? It doesn't. Whatever else might be said about George Floyd's death, the death of that man, this entire DEI thing was pushed on his dead corpse. His dead corpse was used as a springboard for other people's motivations and agendas. And how has that gone in the intervening years? What were you saying earlier about companies slashing their DEI budgets and teams? Why were they doing that? You still haven't answered that question. You've conveniently not answered that question. Between 2019 and 2022, Chief Diversity Inclusion Officer roles grew by 168.9%, according to a LinkedIn analysis. Wow. And now? How now, brown cow? Today, some of those efforts have been rolled back. Yeah, they have been. To what extent? To what extent and why? And people have left DEI roles because they didn't feel fully supported, Hollins said. Yeah, their paychecks got cut or eliminated. That's why. But why? Why were they cut? Why were they eliminated? Companies, quote, were giving the appearance of commitment without actually doing the right work for that commitment to be sustainable, Hollins said. No. I'll give you my guess. Companies, major companies, smaller companies, etc., in order to appease the ESG overlords, put tons and tons of money into DEI programs, in funding DEI officers and DEI consultancies and unconscious bias training and all sorts of little things. They dump tons and tons of money in there under the promise, under the belief that simply by doing this, by populating their workforce or their school or their organization with the right kind of people and taking everybody to task all the time to be conscious of everyone's racial identity or gender identity, they were told that this would increase profits. They were told by McKinsey that this would increase profits, that if you simply populate your organization with the right looking kinds of people and find ways around or not around so much Title VII and other federal laws, that your company will be more profitable. But what quickly happened? They realized that simply having people who look a certain way in your company does not inherently increase profits. It's not about the look, it's about the merit. But DEI is all about the look and not the merit. And so they didn't see a return on investment. Let's think of another three-letter acronym, ROI. Does DEI equal ROI? The answer demonstrably is no. And that's why they've cut the budgets and sliced away the DEI teams. Are you even going to address that, CNN? DEI to ROI. Despite the backlash against DEI programs and initiatives, many companies are standing firm in their support for DEI. Yeah, probably those companies that have no problem burning through money with no return, I suppose, just to keep up, their virtue signaling. A survey published in January by the polling firm Ipsos found 67% of people surveyed said their employers require or offer trainings, lectures, webinars, or resources on DEI. And 71% of people surveyed said they think DEI training is important to, quote, creating a positive workplace culture, unquote. Well, I wonder if anybody in those surveys would have risked saying otherwise in case their jobs were at risk because the company had drunk the Kool-Aid, as it were. Okay. What does DEI look like at work? I don't know. You tell me. I'm guessing skin colors and genders. Today, studies show that many companies are prioritizing some form of DEI. Well, why not all DEI? I mean, it's an inherent good, right? According to a 2023 study by the Pew Research Center, 61% of U.S. adults say their workplace has policies that focus on fairness in hiring, promotions, or pay. And 56% of U.S. adults say, quote, focusing on increasing diversity, equity, and inclusion at work is mainly a good thing, unquote. 56%, huh? So there's 44 and within the margin. Okay, so it's kind of split. Huh, okay. Kelly Baker, Executive Vice President and Chief Human Resource Officer at Thrivent, an organization that provides financial advice, said DEI in the workplace can be a mix of employee training, resource networks, and recruiting practices. Her company, for example, has resource groups. You mean employee resource groups? Oh boy, another three-letter acronym, ERGs. I love ERGs. Has employee resource groups for women in leadership. So men need not apply. Young professionals, so ageist, okay, Black employees, Hispanic employees, and military veterans, among others. Veterans always are an afterthought, aren't they? Oh, so an employee resource group. So you don't have a men in leadership. How about just like a leadership resource group, right? How about a professionals resource group? How about just an employees resource group? The only demographic listed here that is inherently marked with some personal sacrifice and merit are military veterans, people who actually, because of their sacrifice and their duty, might actually require some special help amongst everyone else on this list. The elements primary to them have nothing to do with any merit or effort on their part. You don't have to work to become a woman. You don't have to work to be young. You don't have to work to be Black. You don't have to work to be a Hispanic. But you do have to work to become a military veteran. But okay. CNN, I hate to tell you this, but when it comes to defending DEI, you are damning it with faint praise here. Thrivent's DEI training teaches employees how to understand and bridge cultural differences in the workplace, Baker said. Yes, because if you see someone with a different skin color than yours, they're obviously of a different culture. It's not possible that you were both born in the same city and that you both like the same football team and eat the same kind of, local foods. No, you have to understand. If you see someone that looks a little different from you, they are a complete alien from another planet. Thrivent also seeks job candidates with diversity in their race, geography, gender, and industry background, Baker said. Whoa, hold on. Oh, race and gender? Wait a second. Hold on. Hold on. What was I could have sworn. Wait a second. Wasn't there something? Oh yeah. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act established equal opportunity. You mentioned Title VII, but why would you allow them? Why is race even a consideration? Why is gender even a consideration when it comes to job candidates? CNN, right there, Thrivent is publicly declaring that they are tempting fate with federal law in their hiring practices. Do you not see the problem here? Even in your own copy, ostensibly defending DEI, you have just affirmed that one of your example, sterling companies, has declared that they should be investigated by the EEOC for discriminatory hiring practices. Okay, all right, let's move on. Experts say many corporations tie DEI to their business strategies. Oh, great, yeah. Diversity, quote, is related to our business growth strategy, Baker said. It's pragmatic and essential and critical for us to ensure that our client base reflects the world that we are in and the world that we are going to be in. Your client base. So are you refusing service to some people on the basis of their race, geography, gender, and industry background? What does that mean? I'd love to know. Hey, CNN, you're journalists or something, right? When somebody says something like that, doesn't that cause you to want to ask some more questions? And maybe then relay those answers to the public so they can be informed? Oh, no, that's where the section ends. Okay, well, let's keep going. What does DEI look like in higher education? Well, it looks a lot different now than it did last year. But I guess you'd have to go to California because they outlawed affirmative action back in, I always forget if it's 1995 or 1996, but somewhere within that year span, California across the state outlawed affirmative action. And so California, ever since the mid-90s, has been doing everything it possibly can to find ways around the law and ways around the policies that would otherwise make what they're doing illegal when it comes to diversity on their campuses. So let's find out. College campuses have become ground zero for the DEI debate as state lawmakers across the country launch efforts to halt or limit DEI programs in public schools and universities. Yes. Can you imagine why? Earlier this year, the University of Florida eliminated the office of its chief diversity officer to comply with regulations from the Florida Board of Governors that prohibit spending state funds on DEI programs. Ella Washington, professor of practice of Georgetown University McDonough's School of Business, said she is concerned that efforts to ban DEI on college campuses will prevent students from being prepared for the real world. Oh, how's that? Quote, I think a lot of it is short-sighted and politically motivated, unquote, Washington said. Quote, it's hard for me to believe that all of these lawmakers want exclusion to be taught and to erase all of history, unquote. What did affirmative action do again? On what basis was someone approved of for admissions under affirmative action? Again, talk about exclusion? Okay. Washington said that while DEI looks different on every college campus, yeah, it is interesting that there's really no definition for this. You talked to 7 different professionals, got 7 different answers, and then had to give amalgam definitions yourself, CNN. Didn't even name those experts, by the way. You notice how they didn't name their 7 experts? Didn't give their quoted definitions of those terms. It's very interesting. While DEI looks different on every college campus, many schools focus efforts on recruitment and admissions, curriculum, and special programs for underrepresented students. Underrepresented. Right. There's a word scholarship that should be, I think, at the forefront of consideration for admissions into colleges. But what do I know? Georgetown's Office of Student Equity and Inclusion oversees several DEI-centered programs, including the Disability Cultural Center, Women's Center, LGBTQ Resource Center, and the Center for Multicultural Equity and Access, according to its website. Okay. Washington said there is also a program for first-generation college students where they have a chance to build community. I know. I must be an idiot. I'm not saying that necessarily ironically. I must be an idiot. I don't understand what being a first-generation college student has to do with anything. My parents got through community college. Neither of my parents got a 4-year degree. I was the first person in my family to get a 4-year degree. Okay. Nobody, when I went to college, asked me, "Oh, is your family rooted here?" Or did your father and mother get a 4-year degree? I was never asked these questions. I just showed up and went to my classes and did my exams and things. What does being a first-generation college student do for someone when it comes to discrimination on campus or otherwise? Or is there some? And I honestly, I'm being completely sincere here. Is there some bureaucratic or procedural thing in colleges? And I'm talking colleges broadly. I'm not talking about like some stodgy Ivy League stuff. I'm talking about just college in general, where if you're a first-generation college student, you have a leg down than someone who comes from a family that's been there, right? And again, I can see someone like, oh, well, my father, my grandfather, everybody went to this particular college. I have legacy. I guess I could see that as maybe is it that widespread though? I don't know, but they keep bringing this up and I don't understand what that's supposed to mean. Unless it's very isolated to some very exclusive colleges. Prioritizing and embracing a diverse student body allows students to interact with peers from different walks of life and learn new perspectives, even outside of the classroom, Washington said. Oh, well, you know what? That happened because I left my hometown to go to college. And so did a whole lot of other people that ended up at my college. And it didn't really matter what they looked like because they were all different people with different perspectives. There were several, I know it's a crazy thought. I know it's absolutely crazy. There were several people I met when I went to college who had the same or similar skin color to me that operated in a world diametrically opposed to my personal values and perspectives. And you know what? I still met them. Somehow we still interacted, for better or for worse. So what does race have to do with it again? What? Quote, colleges are certainly a microcosm of the world, Washington said. So having an experience where equity is centered, equality is considered, inclusion is at the forefront of people's minds, those are things we are teaching the next generation about how they should be running the world, unquote. That doesn't sound sinister. What are critics saying? No, I want to hear what proponents are saying who are slashing their budgets. CNN, let's talk about those who were in it to win it and then change their minds. Why is that something you're not willing to look into? In recent years, DEI has become a social and political lightning rod for lawmakers, corporate leaders, and conservative activists who have sought to cast the initiatives as unfair and even racist. Well, what about those that have promoted it as the best thing since sliced bread? I mean, if it's not completely evil, is it completely good? Some were emboldened by the Supreme Court's decision to gut affirmative action last June. Now, why was that? What was the Supreme Court's rationale? Christopher Rufo, a senior fellow at the Manhattan Institute and an outspoken critic of DEI, wrote in a New York Times op-ed last year that, quote, these are not neutral programs to increase demographic diversity. They are political programs that use taxpayer resources to advance a specific partisan orthodoxy, unquote. Okay. And your rejoinder to that would be? Okay. The Claremont Institute, a conservative think tank, holds a similar position. Ryan P. Williams, president of the Institute, previously told CNN he believes the ideology behind DEI is, quote, fundamentally anti-American, unquote. Well, if you look at Title VII, Title VI, and the Civil Rights Act in general as American, and you look at what DEI does, then yes, it is fundamentally un-American. Quote, the words that the acronym DEI represents sound nice, but it is nothing more than affirmative action and racial preferences by a different name, a system that features racial head counts and arbitrarily assigned roles of oppressor and oppressed groups in America, Williams said in an emailed statement. Quote, if we continue to do democracy this way, it will only end in acrimony, strife, resentment, and American collapse, unquote. Hyperbolic? Maybe. A little bit not. Earlier this year, billionaire investor Bill Ackman posted a 4,000-word opus on X that criticized DEI as, quote, inherently a racist and illegal movement that in its implementation, even if it purports to work on behalf of the so-called oppressed, unquote. Ackman's lengthy thesis was later reposted by billionaire Tesla and SpaceX CEO Elon Musk, who now owns the social media platform. Quote, DEI is just another word for racism. Shame on anyone who uses it, unquote, Musk wrote in his post. Okay. And your rejoinder to this is? In a follow-up post, Musk doubled down, adding, quote, DEI, because it discriminates on the basis of race, gender, and many other factors, is not merely immoral, it is also illegal, unquote. I would tend to agree. As you've already told us, CNN, in your thrivent quote of their priorities in hiring practices. It's right there. You put it in your own article. Tesla, which is owned by Musk, has since omitted all language regarding minority workers and outreach to minority communities in its 10-K filing with the SEC made January 29th, CNN previously reported. Oh, so Tesla's not going to evaluate people on the basis of their demographic, first and foremost, but maybe their merit. Okay. But not every business leader agrees. Well, of course not. Mark Cuban, billionaire businessman and minority owner of the Dallas Mavericks, pushed back on Musk's post and thread defending DEI as good for businesses and their workers. Quote, the loss of DEI-phobic companies is my gain, Cuban wrote. Having a workforce that is diverse and representative of your stakeholders is good for business, unquote. Great, CNN. Now, give us the results of how DEI has improved corporations' profit margins. Anytime now. Now you keep saying these things. I'm waiting for the proof. But why have companies been cutting their DEI budgets and letting DEI representatives go over the last couple of years? Not interested in answering that question, or talking to anybody that has been in charge of that. Oh, okay. But Mark Cuban says it's good. So obviously, Mark Cuban is correct. What's next in the fight over DEI? In April 2022, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signed HB 7, known as the Stop Woke Bill, into law. Texas, North Dakota, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Utah also have at least one anti-DEI bill that has been signed into law, according to the Chronicle of Higher Education. Are you going to tell us what the Stop Woke Bill entails? Is that actually the official name of the bill? You're just going to say that happened. No context. Okay. In Nebraska, Republican State Senator Dave Merman proposed a bill in January that would prohibit state colleges and universities from dedicating public money and staff time to DEI efforts. Well, again, considering that the Supreme Court found the diversity initiative justifying affirmative action was unconstitutional, he might have an argument there. The bill is currently with the Nebraska legislature's Education Committee, which will decide whether to move it to the full legislature. Merman's office did not respond to a request for an interview. Nebraska Democratic State Senator Danielle Conrad told CNN she opposes the bill in part because the broader effort to ban DEI has become, quote, divisive, unquote. Yeah, because DEI in and of itself is not divisive. But anyway, she says it also, quote, distracts from the real issues, unquote, colleges are facing, such as families who can't afford tuition. Okay, well, if you want to talk about opportunity based on class differences, that's a whole separate issue and something that I don't necessarily have a problem discussing. And I wouldn't be against supporting, like scholarships, right? Scholarships. Money state and federal set aside for people that have the ability to go to college and have the academic discipline to succeed, but don't have the money. Yeah, I'm for that in spirit. I want to know the specifics. So, okay. But do you think denying people the opportunity to go to college on the basis of their race or their gender or their orientation or other factors that have nothing to do with their scholarship might be unfair? Okay. DEI, she said, is valuable to colleges and universities. Yeah, it's valuable to them so they can say that they are good people while doing bad things. Quote, we absolutely know from common sense and research that when we have more diverse perspectives in discussion or as part of our education, it helps us to have more thoughtful results, unquote, Conrad said. Oh, perspectives and thoughts. What thoughts or perspectives are defined by someone's race or gender? Tell me, oh, tell me true. What can I know about the quality of someone's thinking on the basis of their race or gender? If you have an answer for that question, I have a racist and a sexist to show you. You are not concerned about the quality of perspective and thoughts when you're talking about DEI. Quote, it helps us to be more well-rounded, active, and engaged citizens. If you say so. If you say so. Now, what does this have to do with Kamala Harris? What did all of that have to do with Kamala Harris? Well, there's one part that we have to pay attention to here. Thrivent also seeks job candidates with diversity in their race, geography, gender, and industry background, Baker said. It's right there. It's right there. That simple statement alone should be enough to start an investigation by the EEOC into that company's employment practices. I mean, it's at least rouses one's suspicion, doesn't it? A little bit. And not to mention what the president, or at least the Democratic nominee at the time, said his conditions were for vice president. Person of color or woman as vice president. And then explicitly, we'll pick a woman as vice president. So you want to talk about equity and inclusion and diversity when you say half the population is out the running before I've even considered anyone? You know, talk about Title VII, federal law, when your own example company here says, and I'm assuming that they had no problem with you printing, that they seek job candidates on the basis of their race or gender. Oh yeah, you can add geography and industry background in there to try to dilute the process, but here's the thing, if race is any consideration, if gender is any consideration in their hiring practices, they are breaking federal law. And you say nothing about it. And you say nothing about the companies that have cut their budgets on DEI and why they might be doing that. You'll promote Mark Cuban specifically in saying that DEI is good, not giving any examples how. But yeah, so is Kamala Harris a recipient of DEI processing when it comes to hiring? Yes. Yes. Against all the spirit of the Federal Civil Rights Act of 1964 and Title VII and Title VI, her job was determined first and foremost on her genitals. Secondarily, and certainly as a bonus, on her not being white, but first and foremost on her being a woman. It obviously was not for her political acumen. It obviously was not for her public performance in front of a camera, as we have seen both in her own presidential race and in the time since that she's become vice president. So for someone to say that she is the recipient of a DEI philosophy in achieving this position in particular would not be incorrect. And in fact, I don't think anything CNN said in that article countered that idea, because they went straight from, well, Kamala Harris has been accused of being a DEI candidate. Well, let's talk about what DEI really means. Let's not actually address the accusation or the implication. No. But also, and I don't think I put this into the description, but I'm going to highlight it here and put a link in the chat. This article, I cannot overstate how people really need to read this article, whether you're on the left or the right, whatever. If you want to have some idea of what a Kamala Harris White House would have looked like had she become president back in 2020, you need to read this article. and how she ran her vice presidential office in her first year. And this is CNN putting this article out here. This article is long and detailed and an absolute expose of total and absolute chaos in trying to manage and promote Kamala Harris as a vice president in the duties she was assigned at the time. Now, for all I know, there has been some kind of guidance or training or something going on behind the scenes since this time that have made her a more viable manager and leader. You would be forgiven for thinking that's not the case, given how to the margins she's been pushed in the administration since that time. Someone's revving their engine out there. But everyone needs to look at this as a primer for what you might be getting yourself into if you vote for Kamala Harris to run the country. Just saying. I'll take a minute here for you guys and see if you have anything to say, and then I will wrap up because my voice is starting to give out, if you could believe it. Shadowclaw, Scribelight, I love how CNN has confirmed the white erasure theory with one little sentence. Yeah. Cheryl DeRue, the education system is waking up to classify poor white men as a marginalized group. Just take the race out of it. Poor people who have the ability but don't have the money to go to a college. It should be merit-based only. Merit-based, circumstance-based. You can't help necessarily that you come from poverty. But if you've got a good track record academically, you should be given a chance to improve yourself. That should be the primary consideration. Or elements of good service, like they keep bringing up veterans and resource groups. And I've always said that's the only demographic they bring up with any regularity that actually does deserve a little special consideration. Ah, man. Renovatio, the poorest group in the UK are young white males, the people the feminist and social justice movements batter with DEI. DEI has nothing to do with helping marginalized groups. Nope, it doesn't. It values people on the basis of their appearance and devalues others. It's no different than drinking fountains dedicated to skin color. It's no different. It's no different than a sign outside that said blacks need not apply or whites only or something like that. It's effectively no different. Andy Masterson, it's a celebrity in the chat. Andy Masterson, Kamala says that veterans are important because of the importance of veterans. I know. You know, if you do not learn to master your anger, then your anger will become your master. Master son, even. Yeah. Take that, Sphinx. And if you get that reference, you're a 90s kid. It's fine. Let's see. Shadowclaw Scribble. I don't think people were like that since the 70s or 80s, and even that is regional. I'm probably missing context there. I'm going back a bit too far. Let me get any other comments here. Let's see. It's just that hierarchy is rigid and hard to budge. People feel better when there's someone below them. Yeah, or if they feel like they're doing something beneficial for the lessers in some way, shape, or form. Let's see. Bostonia, the DEI emperor has no clothes. Yeah, and CNN did everything it could here to try to maintain the illusion by not answering the obvious questions to some of its own points. And thank you, Mr. Tickletrunk, for the happy, smiley, lovely Dogcat Fox. Oh, Dogcat Fox.
Wow-wee! Wow!
Oh, that's a drunken uncle, Dogcat Fox. Thank you so much, Mr. Tickletrunk. Appreciate it. Okay, guys, I'm going to start wrapping it up here because my voice is starting to give out. But yeah, so this has been my examination of the accusation that calling Kamala Harris a DEI candidate is somehow racist. No, DEI is racist and sexist, and Kamala Harris benefited from racism and sexism to achieve her position, as directly and plainly stated by the president himself. She is a beneficiary of sexism, at the very least, and implied by his previous statements on the basis of racism. So anybody saying that, oh no, this is a racist accusation, no. It was a racist appointment. It was a sexist appointment. Go talk to Biden about that. Everybody else calling it out for what it is and what it was said to be is not in the wrong. And she should answer that by showing her merit. But she either hasn't been allowed to by the Biden administration by keeping her off to the sidelines this entire time. Again, I was doing streams about her having to claw for relevance in her own campaign back in February. And she certainly hasn't shown it in those times she's been out there trying to play up that she's a leader. I cannot wait for her first unscripted press conference. I cannot wait for her next unscripted interview. I cannot wait for her first debate with Donald Trump. I can't wait. Because honestly, I want to see that if the Kamala Harris described in this article has learned anything over the last 3 years in office that has made her a better candidate than she showed herself to be at the beginning of all this. And that's only because I'm morbidly curious. But either way, everyone, thank you so much for joining me. If you have not already, please check out the recent episode of Living on Borrowed Crime, where I interviewed Dave's Lemonade, Matt Orchard, Mr. Black Pasta, and the Misery Machine to talk about the objections to the genre. I have feelers out there for other interviews in the near future. Fingers crossed, knock for Micah. We'll see what happens with those. But please check out that episode. Or if you know somebody who appreciates true crime, please let them know that that series exists. I appreciate it. Otherwise, you'll find me here Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for another episode of TED Excellence, where I'll take a look at another off-brand TED Talk for education and enlightenment. And I'm stalling for time so I can create a link to the Discord server. Do you know about the Discord server? Well, I'll tell you about the Discord server. I've got a Discord server. Before I tell you about the Discord server, let me tell you about Frank Hubbard IV. Because Frank Hubbard IV says, I'm pretty sure she was hid for her own good. Her own good, Biden's own good, the Democratic Party's own good. But now she's at the forefront. So it's doing nobody any good to keep her on the sidelines. Anyway, there's a link in the chat for the Discord server. If you'd like to join the Discord server, you just have to click on that link. You'll find yourself on the landing channel called Say Hello. And in addition to saying hello, you just have to say the secret word. The secret word tells me that you actually watched the stream and have thus earned the right, the privilege, the entitlement to join the Discord server. And today's secret word is thrivent. Yes, thrivent. A company I'm going to have to look up for perhaps an additional video at some point in the future. Thrivent, I put it in the chat for your reference. Just say, hello, Thrivent, and I'll know that you watched the show. Elsewise, everyone, I want to thank you all for joining me on this beautiful Sunday morning. Moderators, thank you for keeping an eye on things, even though everyone here is so well behaved. You have very, very little to do. Everybody who donated either to myself or to the fundraisers at the top of the chat box, thank you guys so much for your generosity. It is very much appreciated. Everyone, again, thank you for coming. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your Sunday. This is the last day of my vacation. I have to go back to work tomorrow. And in fact, right after this stream, I have to start doing some work to make sure that my Monday isn't an absolute disaster area. So I'll be working today. But I hope that your Sunday otherwise is all fun and good and sparkles and sunshine. And otherwise, I hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon. And I'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.